What if I told you that personal power isn't something you need to conquer, but something you need to remember? For millennia, anonymous masters walked among empires and deserts, carrying a force that came not from muscles or titles, but from presence. They didn't shout. They didn't beg. They didn't compare themselves. And yet, the world around them bowed. Today, neuroscience is beginning to admit something that ancient traditions always knew: the body speaks, energy influences, and the world responds first to what you emit, not what you say. While you doubt yourself, trying to prove your worth, there are ordinary people being treated as extraordinary, simply because they've learned to activate this hidden code. In this video, you'll discover the secret the ancients used to move crowds without saying a word, and why modern science is finally confirming what forgotten civilizations tried to warn us about before they vanished. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why the world still doesn't recognize you as it should, and what to do to change that now. An ordinary man walks into a room and commands respect without saying a word. Ancient wisdom understood this. Modern science is just beginning to explain. He wasn't wearing gold. He wasn't the tallest, or the most handsome. And yet, when he walked in, the room shifted. Not physically, but energetically. Conversations slowed, eyes were drawn in, and for a moment, no one could explain why, but everyone felt it. The ancients called it a field of influence. Today, science calls it energetic coherence. Either way, his presence arrived before his words.
What's most curious is that this man doesn't have more qualities than you. He's not smarter, more spiritual, or more experienced. But he carries something many have abandoned: inner authority. He walks as if he knows he was born to be heard. Egyptian priests trained for this. Stoic emperors wrote about it. And now, neuroscientists are discovering that this kind of presence does, in fact, alter the chemistry of a room, and of the brain itself. That's why, when someone asks, how does he do that? The answer may not lie in a public speaking course, but in an ancient truth you've forgotten. The world has always responded more to what is felt than to what is said. Quantum physics calls it the collapse of the wave function. The ancients called it soul magnetism. But what truly matters is, you can activate this too. And it all starts with what comes next. For centuries, ancient cultures warned, humility without awareness turns into submission. In the Tao Te Ching, for example, Lao Tzu speaks of bending to win, but never of erasing oneself. Yet in the modern West, you were taught to shrink. Let others recognize your worth, they said. But modern neuroscience shows that the human brain responds first to nonverbal signals: posture, tone, firmness, even before processing content. It's as if the world is constantly scanning who you are, before it listens to what you say. And if you project hesitation, even your brilliance sounds doubtful. The ancients knew this. In Egypt, initiates trained for years just to walk with presence. Today, scientists call this extralinguistic communication, the ability to influence without saying a single word. The truth is, the world doesn't reward those who work hard in silence. It rewards those who emit the right signal. A monk may be wise, but if he bows too deeply in a noisy world, no one hears him. The same goes for you. Your energy speaks before you resume. And that's exactly why the next step is so essential. In the philosophical schools of ancient Greece, the Stoics already said, behave like the man you wish to become, and that man will emerge. They understood that the world does not respond to someone's hidden essence, but to the performance they offer the world. Today, cognitive neuroscience confirms, the brain responds emotionally before it rationalizes, and that's why performed confidence is interpreted as real competence. In other words, presence comes before prestige. This is not about faking. It's about embodying with intention. Just as a shaman used rituals to access elevated states of consciousness, you can use your body as a channel, assuming the energy you wish to project. Modern science calls this embodiment, acting as if, until it becomes real. It changes your behavior, your neurochemistry, and how others respond to you. Most people hesitate, and that's why they end up in the backstage of life. Even when they have talent. Even when they have brilliant ideas. Because the stage doesn't reward the most deserving, it rewards the one who steps onto it with conviction. The ancients knew, those who hesitate, miss the timing of destiny. And now, perhaps it's your moment to step firmly into the spotlight. Taoist masters taught that everything begins in the invisible, in the inner world, before it materializes. Confidence is a seed planted in the field of being, not the fruit harvested after success. Modern quantum physics, in turn, affirms that the observer influences reality, your expectation shapes the outcome. Therefore, it's not victory that brings confidence. It's confidence that invites victory. Think about how many opportunities you've lost by hesitating. A glance avoided, a word swallowed, a step delayed. Behavioral biology shows that fear activates the brain's paralysis circuits, while self-confidence, even if artificial at first, activates the circuits of action and mastery. It's no coincidence that natural leaders seem to act before they are ready. They simply chose not to wait for the world's permission. The human body is like an ancient temple, your posture, your breath, your expression, they are silent rituals that shape either the sacred, or the mediocre. So if you want the world to recognize you, don't wait until you feel worthy. Walk as if you already know. Speak as if you carry a truth. Because the world does not bow to those who are good, it bows to those who believe they are. In Egyptian traditions, it was believed that the spirit projected its energy before the mouth ever spoke. Today, neuroscience confirms, the human brain picks up on subtle signals, posture, rhythm, expression, in milliseconds. Before hearing your voice, the world has already decided who you are. What you transmit unconsciously, shapes your visible reality. And if your presence says, "I'm not enough," the universe echoes, then you're not. It's like walking into a silent temple, you feel either reverence or irrelevance based on how it presents itself. Likewise, people don't respond to your resume, they respond to your vibration. Eastern wisdom speaks of qi, the vital energy manifested through intention. Modern physics calls this the personal electromagnetic field. In both cases, the signal you emit changes the behavior of the environment around you. If you enter a room with slouched shoulders, averted eyes, and dragging steps, it doesn't matter how much you've studied, no one will want to listen. But if you walk in with presence, even in silence, something shifts. Because before logic comes instinct. And instinct responds to what feels safe, confident, and authoritative. That's why those who believe in themselves eventually make the world believe too. The ancient masters knew, every ritual begins before the gesture. First comes the intention, then the body aligns. Today, neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, your mind shapes. To act before they are ready. They simply chose not to wait for the world's permission. The human body is like an ancient temple, your posture, your breath, your expression, they are silent rituals that shape either the sacred, or the mediocre. So if you want the world to recognize you, don't wait until you feel worthy. Walk as if you already know. Speak as if you carry a truth. Because the world does not bow to those who are good, it bows to those who believe they are. In Egyptian traditions, it was believed that the spirit projected its energy before the mouth ever spoke. Today, neuroscience confirms, the human brain picks up on subtle signals, posture, rhythm, expression, in milliseconds. Before hearing your voice, the world has already decided who you are. What you transmit unconsciously, shapes your visible reality. And if your presence says, "I'm not enough," the universe echoes, then you're not. It's like walking into a silent temple, you feel either reverence or irrelevance based on how it presents itself. Likewise, people don't respond to your resume, they respond to your vibration. Eastern wisdom speaks of qi, the vital energy manifested through intention. Modern physics calls this the personal electromagnetic field. In both cases, the signal you emit changes the behavior of the environment around you. The body, in turn, feeds back into the mind. So when you act like someone confident, even if you don't feel it yet, you are sculpting a new nervous system. It's not theater. It's inner alchemy. You're not lying to the world, you're teaching yourself a new frequency of existence. Like the samurai warrior who trains his breath and gaze until fear is replaced by absolute focus. Or the stoic speaker who controls his tone of voice to master his emotions before they master him. Pretending is deception. Transformation is rehearsing your own evolution. Every gesture, how you sit, how you hold eye contact, how you move your hands, everything emits frequencies. If you learn to master them, you won't need to raise your voice. The entire room will already be listening. The ancient Indian masters said that true power lies not in the sound, but in the silence between the sounds. Neuroscience now shows that the brain detects intention before words. In other words, when someone enters a space in silence, but with presence, everyone feels it. The difference between being ignored and being magnetic is the kind of energy you transmit when nothing is being said. Silence with presence is mystery. Silence without presence is invisibility. The shaman doesn't need to explain his authority, he is. The same goes for you. How you walk, breathe, observe, all of it speaks for you before your first word. That's why certain leaders stand out without speaking, while others shout and still go unheard. Energy leads. Language only follows. This isn't hollow mysticism, it's applied physics. The heart, when in coherence, generates a powerful electromagnetic field, measurable in labs like the HeartMath Institute. When you enter a state of inner confidence, your field influences the environment. It's not magic, it's biological influence. And now that you know this, how is your field? In ancient Greece, the concept of arete wasn't just about excellence, it was about living up to your full potential, even without anyone's permission. Heroes didn't wait for crowns, they claimed them. And today, behavioral science shows that the one who leads isn't always the most prepared, but the one who acts first. The human brain follows the one who shows clarity, not necessarily the most competent. This principle is ancient, but still current. The world is full of people waiting for approval, green lights, applause, while others simply step in. And the curious part? Often, those who claim the role of leadership aren't the most talented, they're the ones who carry the energy of conviction. They don't ask for permission. They act as if they've already been chosen. Social psychology calls this perceived authority, and it's one of the core pillars behind the masters, prophets, and leaders who shaped civilizations. They didn't arrive asking for a place, they positioned themselves as a channel. You don't need to dominate the world to lead, you just need to stop asking for permission to exist. Because those who lead aren't always the most righteous, they're the most willing to act. In ancient Egypt, priests performed the same rituals every morning, not out of superstition, but because they understood that repetition shapes form. It was a way of sculpting the invisible. Today, neuroscience confirms this. The constant repetition of a behavior activates neuroplasticity, your brain reorganizes itself around what you practice. Identity isn't a gift. It's a habit. Modern psychology calls this embodied identity. The more you repeat a gesture, a posture, a presence, the less it feels like effort, and the more it becomes who you are. Himalayan monks and Roman Stoics knew this well. The path to becoming someone with strong, magnetic presence doesn't begin with waiting for self-confidence. It begins by rehearsing the posture of someone who already has it. The man who claims the invisible crown, day after day, ritual after ritual, eventually becomes seen by the world as a king. Because the collective mind responds to what is familiar. Repeat something long enough, and the world stops doubting. Science calls it the mere exposure effect. Ancient wisdom would call it alignment with destiny. But at its core, both say the same thing: what you affirm consistently, manifests. The sages of antiquity warned, those who fail to honor their divine spark, fade before the world. Today, modern psychology describes this as a lowered self-image, an invisible process where a person, without realizing, sabotages themselves in every gesture, every word, every opportunity. Not out of weakness, but out of habit. A learned habit. A subtle addiction to appearing small. Picture a man who spends his life apologizing for existing, asking for permission to take up space, waiting for recognition before daring to speak. This silent pattern, this disease of self-denial, has no loud symptoms. It erodes slowly, like sand wiping sacred footprints from the desert. And the more a person tries to please to be accepted, the more the world forgets they exist. From shamanic traditions to neuroscience, one truth is clear: what you project, you reinforce. If you treat yourself as irrelevant, the world will simply mirror that. The healing begins when you realize that hiding is not humility, it's an unconscious act of sabotage. Ancient wisdom teaches, the light you deny within, begins to decay. And this brings us to the harshest truth of the modern world. Since ancient times, civilizations like the Hindus and Egyptians spoke of the law of karma, the certainty that every action brings a corresponding reaction, visible or not. But what they didn't always say, is that divine justice doesn't operate on your schedule. In the spiritual realm, all balances out. But in the human realm, ruled by ego and perception, appearance of strength determines who leads. Modern science confirms this. Studies show our brain confuses self-confidence with actual competence. And the ancients knew it too. The leaders of Atlantis, for example, were trained not only in inner wisdom but in how to project it with authority. Because in this world, those who walk as if they carry a purpose, command presence before they're even understood. This doesn't deny karma. It just reveals that until karma acts in its own time, your posture determines how the world treats you. The universe may be conspiring in your favor, but if you don't position yourself as someone worthy of respect, you'll be overlooked by eyes still blind. And that's why, more than knowing, you must repeat the image you want reflected. The ancient mystery schools of Egypt taught something that today might be mistaken as faking. Initiates lived as if they were already masters, long before their enlightenment. It wasn't arrogance, it was conscious rehearsal. They understood that the mind shapes reality, and that how you behave daily conditions not just what the world sees, but what the universe returns. And today, neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. The brain reshapes itself according to the behavior you repeat. That's why repeating gestures of firmness, holding your gaze with certainty, speaking with intention, even when insecurity is screaming inside, is not deception. It's sculpting. Just like a musician repeats scales until mastering the instrument, the wise repeat the image of who they wish to become, until it feels natural. The ancients called this embodying the archetype. Modern science calls it behavioral modeling. You're not lying when you act with presence. You're training the universe, and yourself, to align vibration with action. And once this frequency settles, doors that once seemed sealed begin to open, as if the world had been waiting for you to finally claim what was already yours. And if that sounds exaggerated, it's only because we're just beginning to see what this daily practice can truly reveal. In the ancient Tao Te Ching, there's a subtle principle that says, the world treats with reverence the one who moves in harmony with their own value. What Lao Tzu pointed to intuitively, social psychology now confirms: people treat you based on the image you consistently repeat. If your energy sends a signal of presence, respect, and conviction, the world responds in kind. But if what you project is doubt, hesitation, or self-deprecation, the social mirror reflects that without mercy. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have an aura of authority, even without saying much? That's not inborn charisma, it's training. They built that magnetic field by repeating, day after day, the same posture, the same steady gaze, the same confident silence. And over time, this reprograms not only how others see them, but also their own identity. It's like a frequency that becomes unmistakable. And the world adjusts to it. This is the secret so many waste. You're constantly teaching the world how it should treat you. The way you walk into a room, respond to a comment, or face a challenge, it all sends a message. Everything is a signal. And what you repeat, the world learns. Because in the end, reputation doesn't come from truth, it comes from consistency. And when your consistency is aligned with presence and wisdom, the result is respect. The ancients taught that every decision not made is a decision in itself, and almost always, it's the one that keeps you small. Modern science now confirms, the human brain prefers the comfort of the familiar, even if it costs freedom, fulfillment, or identity. And that's why so many live as side characters in their own lives. But there comes a moment, when the soul can no longer wait. And that moment, for whoever is hearing this now, is today. The crossroads is clear: continue hiding behind the idea that, someday, maybe, or choose to become the architect of your own legend. The world doesn't care who you could have been. It responds to who you declare yourself to be. And that declaration doesn't come in words, it comes in presence. It comes from an internal decision to stop asking for permission to exist, and start owning your worth like an emperor claims his throne, not because it was handed to him, but because he finally understood it was always his. And here lies the truth that separates those who shape history from those shaped by it: the man who claims power first, reigns. This isn't about domination. It's about responsibility. About presence. About honoring the space you occupy in the world, and not leaving it empty out of fear, doubt, or old memories. Ancient wisdom and modern science agree: those who lead themselves, lead the world. Now that you understand what the ancients knew, and what science is only just beginning to confirm, the real question is, will you keep hiding, or will you finally step into the role you were born to live? How many opportunities have you let slip by because you doubted your own energy? How many times was the silence of your presence mistaken for invisibility, when it could have been a sign of leadership? The world won't change the way it sees you, until you change the way you show yourself. So tell me, will you leave this video the same way you came in, or will you walk out like someone who knows they carry the same code as the great masters who shaped history? If this message made sense to you, share it with someone else who also needs to wake up. And if you want to continue this journey of ancient wisdom validated by modern science, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your awakening begins now.